West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, to all those stuck on I-25 listening to the Jeff and Bill Show, our apologies that your commute is so terrible. But we're glad to have you listening.
Yeah, I'm checking out with Susan Phelan on the traffic map, and I'm seeing 4 accidents that are running from 70, starting just beyond 76. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 now. Oh, my Lord. Just avoid southbound I-25. Don't do it. It starts at 76. You've got 3 before you hit 70. And then now there's another 3. Okay, now there are 3 after you cross over 70 and you go south. This is ridiculous. Yeah, just avoid southbound I-25. Don't even bother.
Well, while you're waiting, make sure you're on your hands-free device because welcome to Colorado. But feel free to give us a call. Yeah. It is hot this morning.
Now things are going to break at Colfax. If you're gonna avoid it and you need to get back on I-25, you have to use that as a southbound. Things are going to break free for you after Colfax. That looks like probably your best way to get around. If you can reach Colfax, you can get onto I-25 southbound. That's going to be your best way around that situation. Just to help you out this morning.
And Bill and I are talking Donald Trump moving Space Command, and the text messages are so hot on this one. Wow, and they're on all sides of this. I'll walk through some of them here. Yes, what he's doing is pretty logical. He's also taking a stab at Colorado, or jab at Colorado. And that's pretty par for the course with Trump. But what he's doing, logical, 1514. 6823, as a 3-time Trump voter, I think moving Space Command is one of the dumbest things he can do. Well, I can't imagine what it's like having to be on the defense since he came down the escalator, but this is too much. 0459, Trump's acting childish and insecure. Anyone who says this is a matter of who's going to be able to handle the responsibility of Space Command better, it's ridiculous. He's going to move it to a place full of people who think the earth was made 6,000 years ago and in 6 days. So 0459, not a fan of the people of Alabama. 3631, if I'm in Alabama, every anti-Trump action by Colorado would have been used to have Space Command moved, but I still disagree with the move. 6464, Trump chose Huntsville to be the HQ for Space Command in his first term. The real question is, did he have to promise to keep it here? Right? He made the choice. It was Biden who rejected the studies and everything that the military came up with to put it in Huntsville.
He actually, instead of rejecting, though, he asked for a review.
Oh, a review.
So whether or not you believe or not they just rubber stamped what Biden wanted to do, he did at least, again, whether or not you think it's real or just performative, he did go through a process. I didn't investigate the process. I don't know if it was anything beyond that, but I do understand there was a review post Trump administration. And then that's when Biden chose Colorado Springs. But again, do with it as you may. I know nothing about the process or procedure of any sort of review. It could have just been pulling the name Colorado Springs out of a hat that only contained the name Colorado Springs. I don't know.
0600 going, Jeff, this is Trump using his power to free Tina Peters. He's making Jared Polis and Jenna Griswold and Phil Weiser pay for it that way. 7638. Jeff, I love listening to this because Billy constantly shows how stupid MAGA boneheads like you are. Okay, not addressing the issue. Who wants to move to Alabama? They write, it's the armpit of the nation. Well, you've got a lot going on military-wise down there.
You know, there's something interesting there and we talked about a little bit off air yesterday. And, I'm hoping that's our friend Ron calling right back. Having a little bit of a phone issue this morning, so if you call in, sometimes I'm going to have you reconnect. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. That could some of the politics inside of Alabama have been part of the reason that Biden chose to move that away. At the time,
Yeah,
Tommy Tuberville was holding up all promotions for all people in the military because he was mad about laws and abortion. And so could this possibly have been because Alabama Senator Tuberville was holding up every single military promotion at the time? Is this just the idea that, well, if Tuberville was a pain in the butt, and so Donald and Biden was, was doing that to him, are we just doing tit for tat? Is this it now? Are all the reasons that we say, Donald Trump's punishing, could we also say Biden was punishing Alabama? I don't know. I just don't know.
Joan from Lakewood saying this is the right move to Huntsville. It's in the best interest of the nation. The command center needs to be completely built from the bottom up to be technologically superior. And then lots of people texting in with some traffic updates. Breadman saying I had to take Brighton Boulevard to 20th and then get back on I-25. So,
yeah, that's a good way around.
Love you all jumping in on the conversation. Feel free to give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us at 720-819-5115. Now it's time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, 56, sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 87 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, Aurora's police chief says a suspect refused to obey comments and tossed away a gun before he was shot and killed by an officer on Saturday.
It appears the officer believed he faced an imminent threat of death or serious injury, and he acted.
Chief Todd Chamberlain talked about the shooting of 37-year-old Rajon Belt Stubblefield on Tuesday. The chief said Belt Stubblefield refused orders to stay in his vehicle and encouraged bystanders to pick up his discarded gun while moving toward the officer. Chamberlain said the officer struck Belt Stubblefield in an attempt to de-escalate the confrontation and then shot the suspect as he kept moving forward.
By the way, and we're going to get into this in the 9 o'clock hour, the Colorado Black Democratic Legislative Caucus came out with a statement days ago, before any of this was out there, claiming multiple times during the statement that this was the death of an unarmed black man. I'm just so tired of this jump out there, race to make statements, and try to disparage police.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous.
Doesn't matter the facts.
And this guy's criminal history, which we're going to get to in the 9 o'clock hour, too, ain't that great.
Resisting.
Lots of domestic violence charges.
Oh, wow. Of course. Resisting.
And today we're moving forward with what we want to do and the place that we want to have this, and this will be there for hopefully hundreds of years. That's where it's going to be.
DJT says U.S. Space Command will move from the Springs to Huntsville, Alabama. 47 says Colorado's laws on voting by mail was a factor in his decision because he probably felt we need a more patriotic state for something like this. And you know what? It's always been a destination spot for tourists to see the Rocket and Space Center in Huntsville. I used to go there, 40 years ago. U.S. Space Command HQ will shift its operations from Peterson Space Force Base to Huntsville's Redstone Arsenals in the coming years.
I will say I want to thank Colorado. The problem I have with Colorado, one of the big problems, they do mail-in voting. They went to all mail-in voting. So they have automatically crooked elections, and we can't have that. When a state is for mail-in voting, that means they want dishonest elections because that's what that means. So that played a big factor also. In Huntsville, Space Com will play a key role in building the Golden Dome, as you know. That's going to be a big thing. Everybody wants to be a participant in it.
including Canada. Nice job, lefties in Colorado. See what you done? DJT isn't messing around. We struck a cartel cocaine speedboat in the Caribbean, headed to the States, killed 11 TDA narco terrorists, and sent a message to the cartel, i.e. government, in Venezuela. Here's what Nicolas Maduro, Venezuelan dictator hiding out, had to say.
Trump, you have to be careful because Marco Rubio wants you to stain your hands with blood, with a terrible war against South America and the Caribbean, because this would be all-out war in the continent.
I don't know. Stop selling drugs to Americans?
Yeah, how about that?
Seems like if you do that, there's no war.
Right, we won't have war. Exactly. Stop.
Getting our kids addicted to fentanyl, killing them with overdoses? Exactly. I don't know. Maybe stop that. We won't be bombing stuff.
Maybe eliminate that. Maybe start focusing on oil and instead of cocaine and fentanyl. And maybe not dictating everything in your country and watching people starve to death. Millions and millions of people starve to death. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be in Mexico and Ecuador this week to discuss cartels and immigration. The State Department says Rubio is expected to meet today with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum to discuss a new security agreement that would fight the flow of weapons and fentanyl across the U.S. border. Dozens of Epstein sexual abuse victims are expected to rally in D.C. today as the first batch of documents related to the late sex offender is being released.
The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee gave the okay for the 33,000 pages of information to go public. The documents include video from the area outside Epstein's jail cell in New York City prior to him committing suicide, and also the DOJ's interview with Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson.
We want to bring justice to every single person who is involved in the Epstein evils of the cover-up thereof.
Some lawmakers are trying to get all of the Epstein documents released. Scott Pringle, NBC News Radio, New York.
VP JD set to visit Minneapolis today following last week's deadly shooting at the Annunciation Catholic School. He's expected to hold a series of private meetings to convey condolences to families of those affected by the tragedy. The man suspected of New York's Gilgo Beach serial killings will be in court today. A judge is expected to rule whether the use of new DNA techniques can be used against 59-year-old Rex Hugh Werman. Hugh Werman is accused of murdering at least 7 women over 3 decades on the Long Island coast. A rock feud is erupting between Pink Floyd and Black Sabbath. The beef started earlier this month when Pink Floyd founder Roger Waters made a dismissive comment or comments about Black Sabbath singer Ozzy Osbourne. After his death on Tuesday, Osbourne's 39-year-old son Jack responded on Instagram by calling Waters pathetic and out of touch. I need to find out from Billy what this is all about, but it sounds like a little rock feud here between Pink Floyd and Black Sabbath. All right, Delaware, the Fighting Blue Hens at Folsom on Saturday to take on Deion Sanders' CU Buffaloes at 1:30. CSU plays host to UNC. Wyoming takes on Northern Iowa. Tomorrow night, NFL kicks off with the Cowboys and Eagles. And obviously, Dallas without Micah Parsons. The Broncos, big practice today, tomorrow, Friday, as they prepare for the Titans on Sunday at Mile High, 2:05 kickoff. 55 in Hudson, 53 in Larkspur, 56 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
I want to say to all of them, every genocide enabler, look at this rooms, mother. We ain't going anywhere.
Oh, yeah, Rashida Tlaib. What a great person. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Mostly sunny to partly sunny and very pleasant here in Denver and along the Front Range today, tomorrow, and Thursday. As nice September weather will dominate. Highs will be 80s, overnight lows will be 50s. For Friday and the weekend, a little bit cooler, 70s to near 80 or so, and we'll see some better chances of afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Weather is a service of L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Donald Trump making the decision to move U.S. Space Command from Colorado Springs to Huntsville, Alabama. And boy, oh boy, Phil Weiser is big mad. That's what he wrote yesterday. The Trump administration should not play political games with our nation's military readiness and military families. Moving Space Command headquarters to Alabama is not only wrong for our national defense. Does he have a good grasp on national defense? I don't know, but he says it's wrong. But it's harmful to hundreds of Space Command personnel and their families. The El Paso County residents are our neighbors. They relied on the federal government's decision to keep Space Command HQ in Colorado Springs. They bought homes for their families, selected schools for their children, and have contributed to the local economy. The Colorado Attorney General's office has been preparing in the event the president made such an unlawful decision. Unlawful? Really? Unlawful? Decision to move Space Command HQ. If the Trump administration takes this step, Phil Weiser says, I'm prepared to challenge it in court. Phil Weiser adding to the 33 lawsuits that the state of Colorado has already brought against President Trump with this next one. Is he right? Well, George Brauchler responded on X saying, detrimental reliance? That's your legal argument? You can give us some insight on that. Joining us now, the district attorney from the Judicial District 23 this morning. George, thank you for taking time.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, thanks for having me on. If it sounds choppy on your end, it's because it sounds choppy on mine too. Is this okay?
Yeah, we got a little choppy, so we'll see if we can get that fixed up.
Let me call you back. Let me call you right back.
We're having some issues with the phones today. All right, let's talk Guy Rees real quick. Friends, went out to Guy Rees with my wife and Parker. Had a great experience there with Crystal, the designer. Guy Rees is a wonderful option to improve your home decor. From custom blinds, shades, and shutters from Hunter Douglas to new paint, home decor itself, you get personal design attention. And it doesn't break your bank. All right? They have come out to our house. They've brought samples so we can see what the color looks like in our home, what the blinds will look like in our home. And they do precise laser measuring. So it is great to have that personal design attention. My wife has loved it. Visit GuyRees.com, GUIRYS.com, GUIRYS.com to schedule your in-home consultation. GuyRees.com, GuyRees.com. You'll be sure to thank me. All right, we're going to try again with George. Good morning, George.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Perfect. You sound great. All right, Phil Weiser adding to the 33 lawsuits already against President Trump, this time over the unlawful, he claims, move of Space Command. Is he right?
I don't think so. I don't think this is a close call, but I don't think that's why he's doing it either. By the way, I feel like I have to give every disclaimer before a call by saying, yes, I lost to Phil in 2018 for Attorney General. Nonetheless, this is a guy who has become hyper-partisan times two now that he's running for governor. I'll give you an example. He just put out a press release on X about some other minor win that they had on some other lawsuit. He's now attaching a photo of himself onto the press release as opposed to just the press release. He is so rabidly politically ambitious, and that's what this lawsuit is against
George,
Trump.
He's very handsome.
Well,
don't dismiss that. I mean, I'm looking at this post right here, and those gazing eyes into your soul. It's just
hard to imagine anyone reading the words and not just looking at him and saying this is good enough. But let me say this on the lawsuit here. It's a win for him because he's trying to chisel away at some kind of support that maybe Bennett has for being the moderate armed services guy or whatever he can get done, foreign affairs. in a place where he might need to compete in the general election, and that's El Paso County. So that's why he says things like, I feel your pain on the houses you bought and the reliance that you built up in trying to establish a life down here in the Springs, and this horrible, evil man just ripped away all of these jobs and sent them to Alabama, and who wants to live to Alabama? I don't think he has a chance of winning this because unlike the other lawsuits that he's had that are premised on conduct of Congress, like Congress passes legislation authorizing things, this one to me seems to be a slam dunk for the president. And I should tell you, I am absolutely opposed to this decision. I think the president is wrong to move it to Alabama, but he gets to make that call as the commander-in-chief. And so the only grounds I can see, and I'm no genius in this area, is the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA. And what that means is Phil has to argue that Trump's decision was arbitrary and capricious. That's tough because he'd made the decision in 21. Biden waited 2 years to reverse it, and now within the first 9 months of the Trump administration, first 8 months, he reverses it back. But this is something you and Billy have talked about that does give me just a little bit of pause. When Trump links that decision to something completely unrelated to national security, and that is, by the way, Colorado has mail-in ballots, he invites the argument that this decision was arbitrary and capricious and untethered to rational basis. That's the one thing it seems to me that Phil could argue now.
That's George Brauchler, District Attorney, Judicial District 23. We're talking about Donald Trump moving Space Command from Colorado Springs to Huntsville, Alabama. George, you're a military man in addition to being a brilliant legal mind. You know, can you give us some insight as to how these types of decisions are made? You mentioned that it was made in 2021 to move it to Huntsville. Biden kept it here. Do you see this type of ping-ponging happening oftentimes within the military?
Not at this decision-making public level, but, you know, if you go back to BRAC when we had the Base Realignment Commission, and we were having to make decisions about what bases to shut down and which ones to keep open, I want to tell you that every decision was somehow based upon best interests of the military and national security. I don't believe that. I believe politics weighs in on all of these decisions. They just usually happen before a decision is announced. This is the only one I can think of like this, and maybe someone out there will AI me correct, but where a decision was made by the president this late or early in 2021, reversed by the next president, and then reversed again by the same president who got reelected. I've never seen anything quite like this.
I do wonder if the decision to move BLM back, that kind of ping-ponging that took place where Trump moves it to Grand Junction, at least its headquarters, Biden moves it back to Washington, D.C., would be some type of similar political ping-ponging.
Absolutely, it's similar and political, but we've never seen anything like this. You know, before the Trump-Biden changes of administration, I don't recall seeing anything like this. But of course, that was political in nature. They just can't say it, and that's the problem with what Trump's done here. In my opinion, if he had just stood up and said, "Look, we did an assessment of this. We looked at all the things," and he threw out some facts like the number of space engineers in Alabama or the amount of investment in space already with the military in Alabama, if he just stuck to those talking points and then finished up by, I think this is in the best interest of our nation long term, period, and it's over. But he can't not do that. That's just one of the things about DJT. He's got to tether it to some other political poke in the eye. And that's the only area, I think, where Weiser may have some argument. I still think it's a loser.
George Brauchler, District Attorney, Judicial District 23. Now, Huntsville is known as the Rocket City, and it does have a strong connection to space there. So is there a logical reason to move it?
Yeah, and yes, there's a logical reason. There's a rational reason to do it. All that is true. But does that make it the best decision? In my opinion, no. Hands down, space should be in Colorado Springs for all the things we've been doing now for decades down there and the opportunities it presents for us moving forward. And there's a whole bunch of science-based reasons that I can't really describe to you about being located in Colorado Springs that make it better than Huntsville. Huntsville might be a good place to launch rockets. Doesn't mean it's the best place to run Space Command. Having said that, the president doesn't have to care what George Brauchler thinks about this. or what anybody else thinks. The president gets to make a decision based on a whole bunch of information he's provided, some of which we have access to, some of which we don't. What he can't do is make a decisions on this based on politics. So I hear all those listeners out there that are texting in saying, hey, we brought this on ourselves and we should have done this. And I understand all that. It's irrelevant to the issue of where to place a military base. And so I still think it's a stone-cold loser. I think there's one other aspect of this, by the way, and I love our Republican delegation for Congress, don't get me wrong. But couldn't these four maybe have gotten together on the big, beautiful bill and gone to Mike Johnson and said, hey, let me tell you what, we're happy to vote for this, and I know that you need every one of our votes, but you got to figure out a way to lock down Space Command in Colorado Springs or we won't vote for it. Now, I know that would take a lot of political guts, but wouldn't that have gotten us the outcome we wanted?
That's a really good point. George Brauchler, Judicial District 23, talking Donald Trump moving the Space Command from Colorado Springs to Huntsville, Alabama. George, this may not be a fair question. You may not know, but I got confused the difference between Space Force and Space Command. Can you give us a little insight into the difference between those two?
Yeah, I wish I could give you more, but, in the National Guard, the big debate for us has been how much of a role can National Guard play in either, because they're not in a Venn diagram and eclipse. That's not how it works. And so there has been a big move nationally by some folks to treat the National Guard like a Homeland Security force only. And so when you start to, and that, what that means is we just have less influence and impact over some of the space stuff. We had certain battalions, or organizations, military units that would have been down in the Springs and in Colorado by virtue of Space Command and Space Force, but those things are slowly being taken away. And by the way, that question gets us to this other issue, and that is the deployment of National Guard troops in places other than a federal enclave like D.C. I just want folks to remember that, look, the National Guard's superpowers, and we have them, are to be able to enforce local laws, criminal laws. We can assist in those things while we're National Guardsmen, while we're Title 32 Guardsmen. The minute you federalize us and make us Title 10 military, we lose all those superpowers. So it works in D.C. because it's a federal enclave. If the president were to federalize us and send us to Denver, this is me just speculating here that I don't think it'll ever happen, we don't have the same powers. We become like regular military, and Posse Comitatus Act says you can't help with the criminal stuff.
But you could, and I think Trump may be thinking this, is that when you flood the zone with a lot of military, even though they may not be directly arresting guys stealing cars, there may not be a lot of car theft taking place with those guys around.
That visible deterrent, yes, but they couldn't do anything like even control traffic in an intersection. Couldn't even do that.
So how do you think Trump's working this through? Because I think he sees a political advantage to this. He's putting Democrats into the kind of pro-crime, we're going to stand on the criminal side of things, like what you're seeing in Chicago, where, you're putting the Democrats in a rough spot. Because you're showing that Republicans can lead in making cities safer.
Well, I think that's the brilliant political move, right? Like, people ask, why is he only doing this in Democrat cities? It's obvious. He's pitting law enforcement and stopping criminals against the people in power who happen to be Dems. That's why. All the people that talk about, there's higher crime rates in certain Republican areas, may be true. It doesn't get him anything politically to go down there and try to address that problem in this way. He takes on Pritzker, and now all of a sudden he's got Pritzker coming out saying, we demand you don't do anything to help us stop all of these murders. You know what I mean? Like, it's a brilliant political move on his part.
So then how does he get around the legal side of it? I mean, in your mind, how does he nationalize the National Guard or federalize the National Guard and then use them in places like Chicago?
I don't think he can. I really don't think he can. I think short of some type of martial law, which, my God, we should never see that, or him just posting them there for what you said, Jeff, which is sort of that visible deterrent sort of a thing, short of that, I'm not smart enough to find a way around our existing laws that say, yeah, you can use these people the way you are in D.C. I just don't see it.
Now, George, I want to follow up a little bit there. If the premise is that using the military has led to, as Donald Trump says, zero crime in Washington, D.C., if he's only deploying this military to tamp down on crime in a place like Chicago, shouldn't we then welcome martial law? I've seen a lot of people that are on the GOP side of the aisle trumpet the idea of deploying the military into Washington, D.C., and how it has made the city safer. Shouldn't we then embrace the idea of deploying the military, not just in Chicago, but in every major city across the country, because, evidently, according to Donald Trump, it brings crime down to zero? Shouldn't we welcome martial law? And I'm being a little facetious, but what do you think?
No, not a chance, man. Listen, there has to be some limits to how we're going to exercise the massive federal authority that's out there and deploy these good men and women in uniform, and that is not a way to do it. Could I see a city devolving into Escape from New York and then maybe needing to consider something like that? Maybe, but we're not there with Chicago. I think what he's doing right now is just smart politically to continue to pit the Dems against law enforcement and trying to protect victims and prevent victimization. But no, my gosh, I don't want to see that. I just think the problems that it creates down the road are huge, not just legally, but precedent setting. Like, let's pretend there's a President Newsom out there, and I just spit up in my mouth saying it out loud, but let's pretend that for a moment. Once we pull the seal off of this issue, where could he use the military to do something against folks like, what if we had people that got super upset about Second Amendment violations or laws that are being passed in Colorado, and they want to protest, and they want to do this and that? Could he deploy the federal troops then? Could he federalize the Guard to shut them down? We don't want that. I don't like the precedent it sets.
Yeah, I just don't think it's put in the same category. You have people that are openly breaking the law in these cities. What if a Democrat mayor just said, look, we're going to flood the zone for a bit. We got a big crime area for 6 weeks. Donald Trump, I'd love to work with you. Bring them in. Let's get the city of Denver safe, for instance, and then they can move on. I don't think that's a military occupation. I don't think it's martial law. I think it's smart for a Democrat mayor to consider that.
I think a mayor is powerless to do that. A governor isn't. So if Governor Polis were to say, I agree, I want to see if we can't make a huge dent in what's going on in Denver, crime-wise, bigger than what we've done so far, the governor could, on his own authority, mobilize National Guardsmen to do certain things. But when the governor doesn't, it is a check on the use of the National Guard. Then asking the president to go ahead and use his limited powers, and he has limited powers, but they're massive, to federalize those troops is a different analysis. If the Governor Abbott in Texas said, hey, I do want you, Mr. President, to help us out here, he didn't even need the president. He can mobilize the National Guard. And in fact, what a lot of people don't know is he did. He's mobilized the National Guard over the past X number of years to sit on the border and protect Texan private property from border crossings. I went and saw it when we all went down to El Paso. Remember that? That was February a couple years ago. It was Steph and me, Deb, Kelly. We all went down. There were National Guard troops from Texas manning the border, not on federal orders, on Texas governor's orders. Polis could do the same thing, but if he chooses not to, then it requires the president federalizing them, and they lose their powers. At least the law enforcement ones.
What worries me in the example is if Donald Trump can create a national police force by grabbing a hold of the National Guard based on a definition of crime, emergency, or some sort of a civil uprising inside of a city, that leaves the definition very wide open for a Democrat president to then call something else an emergency, crime, or a threat to civility in the city. If it's allowed to be self-defined by the president, a Democrat president could name anything crime, could name anything emergency. That, to me, the operational definition is the most dangerous
in the
example.
Like holding to your Second Amendment rights?
Yeah, refusing to comply with what may be a law. If they get a law, then you would be uncivil, and so then it would be an emergency. that you're not following the law, because that's the issue here, that Colorado isn't following the law, the immigration law. So now we have another law, and because the state's not following it, now we have a similar emergency. It's just defined differently as an emergency by different politics. That's the problem.
Well, no, I think the problem is that Democrats look at car theft, murder, and theft as something that's going to be tolerated, but we're going to use the National Guard to go after you if you have your Second Amendment rights. You own a weapon or something.
Civil unrest and civil disorder could be a legitimate use for federalized troops. That part is true. And Billy's right to be concerned about how broadly do we want to define that when our guy is in office versus theirs. I think that's a legitimate concern. But I don't think we're approaching, just based off of crime, anywhere near the civil unrest or civil disorder that I think the law has previously supported. Again, I think the brilliance of this move by Trump is not that it's going to happen or that it would be legal. It's that by throwing it out there, and this is what this guy does better than any politician I've ever seen, he creates an issue that forces the Dems to reveal themselves. Now, we can talk about it in little ways where they vote for probation for child rapists and stuff like this, but this guy goes on the national stage and says, hey, you're dropping bodies all over the place in Chicago. I'd like to stop it. And Pritzker runs to the microphone to say, I'll stop you from stopping it. I mean, it's brilliant politically.
Yeah, that's great. George Brauchler joining us this morning, Judicial District 23 District Attorney. George, thank you for taking time to walk us through some of this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for figuring out the phone, Billy, and both of you, thanks for having me on all the time. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thanks.
George Brauchler. Follow him on X. He's a lot of fun there. George Brauchler on X. All right, we'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
For all of you stuck in I-25, our apologies.
Yeah, that's ugly.
631 or 6135 texting in. Just open up the HOV lanes for free for the next 2 hours. Help people get through this.
That's not a bad idea. I'm not certain about the HOV lanes that would cover the entire area, but yeah, there's some merit to that. But that would involve way too much thinking and proactiveness and everything else going on in the mornings. Yeah, it's a mess though. So basically, from 76 down on I-25 southbound, it's an absolute mess, and it's gonna keep you tied up. Oh geez, through 70, and it looks like what I'm seeing right now, maybe Colfax might be the best way again to get on. If you have to go southbound I-25, avoid it up until you get to the major thoroughfare of Colfax. That might be your best way of avoiding all of the problems so far. Spear would help you as well, but that's about as far down as you need to go in order to miss most of the problems this morning. If you're above Spear, avoid I-25. Don't go southbound. Just don't.
Should have ridden your bike.
Yeah.
Mike
or taking
Johnston.
the train. Yeah,
there you go. It's all part of a scam.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking Donald Trump moving U.S. Space Command from Colorado Springs to Huntsville, Alabama. And boy, the text messages are hot on this one. And they're on both sides of this. People reminding us that how far the show has fallen since George has left.
Yeah, Jeff and I were talking about that off air.
And we're like,
yeah.
Yes, the guy was one heartbeat away from being the Attorney General of the state.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not even the same universe as
not
George
even close.
Brauchler.
Yeah, not even close. We're not trying.
And you
to be
think we're
George.
surprised by that comment?
Nope, not at all. No. And you think it hurt our feelings? No, we agree with you. We told that to the people in charge here. You're like, you understand what you're doing here? You understand the downgrade you're choosing? Like, yes, we are. Like,
George is brilliant.
Yeah,
Grateful for the great work he's doing and the fact he took time to join us this morning.
That's why I bring him on so often. Try to class up the joint here. Hey, come on, people.
That's right. Text messages, comments all over on this one. Folks online saying the Air Force's own analysis confirmed Huntsville was the optimal choice for Space Command, saving taxpayers $426 million and aligning with strategic readiness. Biden's Colorado reversal wasn't about national security. It was pure political favoritism. DOD reports that show Colorado's facilities are fragmented, understaffed, and lack secure infrastructure, while Redstone Arsenal offered purpose-built solutions. When politicians override military expertise for partisan gain, it's not just wasteful, it's a direct threat to U.S. dominance in space. Alabama's readiness was sacrificed for Colorado's lobbyists. That may be the case, as George Brauchler pointed out, though, by mentioning mail-in balloting. Trump opened himself up to that lawsuit.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Arbitrary and capricious.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me is that with the text message, you make a good case. Why wasn't that the case that was made by the chief executive? Why, when Donald Trump came out, did he not make the exact case the texter did, especially based on economics for cost of living and infrastructure? You can probably make a decent argument for that, and it would make many of the Democrats in our state look childish, especially Phil Weiser trying to sue him if Donald Trump comes out, in my opinion, and does it based on economic conditions as the text message lays out. But when he goes to, because you have all mail-in balloting and that equals crooked elections, that's disjointed from the existence of the Space Command in the first place. And I think that's a problem. If he would have made the case the text messenger made, I think he's got a stronger leg to stand on.
To George's point, though, Trump has the brilliant ability to elevate issues to the national conversation. And in this case, conversations about whether or not you can trust elections that have mail-in ballots. And now he includes that in this conversation. What do you think? Give us a call, 303-696-1971. The Republicans joining with Democrats in condemning this move. This was a bipartisan rejection and condemnation of the move. Do you agree with that, or is Trump making the right decision militarily? You may disagree with what he said was the reason yesterday, but as reports have shown, this would be better for the U.S. military to move it there. Let's go to the phone lines. Francis Golden. Good morning, Francis. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Hey, you guys. Hey, everybody who is saying that this is a logical reason based on prior logistic analysis of Huntsville versus Colorado Springs and all these other things, step back. Divorce that from exactly what Trump is saying. This is just a vindictive move on the part of Trump. When he's saying, well, mail-in ballots somehow disqualify Colorado from being a logical location for Space Command, talking logically. This is all just emotional. There isn't anything to do with logic here. And so I just want to know how much this whole move is going to cost in the long run. And I don't want to hear any more squawking of savings and Doge or anything else if we're going to go through with something like this. It's just pointless. It's a, you know, look, man, Trump's only got a few more, if we're going to talk about space, he's only got a few more rotations around the sun under his belt in the first place, and it's about time he grow up and quit acting vindictive. You know,
Francis, I feel like you mixed a lot there. I mean, you can.
Probably,
I mean, and well, I mean, George Brauchler said, "Look, this thing would have been fine. You just shouldn't have mentioned mail-in ballots." So, can you say that this move is a rejection of Doge, is spending? There's some reports out there saying that this will save the military money in the long run. So, can you say the entire thing is illogical?
I don't know. Maybe I'll back off that a little bit now, Jeff. Now that you're holding my feet to the fire, I feel the heat. But it's maybe not entirely illogical, because if it does save money in the long run, I haven't seen anything that would show that. And in the short run is when the country is in bad shape financially. And so if it's not going to save money in the short run, I don't see a point to it. And I just that's my logical analysis, is that on a timeline analysis, when you need to do something that's going to be positive for the country, either financially or otherwise, I don't want to see what it could look like in 100 years or 50 years. We need help now. I just don't. I can't, when I'm listening to the president try to say that the reason for this is mail-in ballots, and the two things have nothing to do with each other, why then is somebody justifying this as logical? It isn't. It just flatly isn't. I'm being partisan. I want to hear.
Well,
I
made the argument early on, and I think while he mentioned mail-in ballots, I think it's bigger than that. I think it's the entire establishment of Democrats that control every statewide office using the power of their offices to try to stop the Trump agenda. 33 lawsuits against the president. So, yeah, he may have mentioned in a press conference what came to mind was mail-in ballots, but I think it's the entire state. I think it's them fighting him on sanctuary city policies and every other aspect of his agenda. And he just goes, look, I got the power. I'm tired of it. It's not much different, in my opinion, than what Jared Polis is doing with the 6 cities. Going, my agenda is high-density multifamily. You're not on board, I'm holding the money back. And that's just what the executives have the prerogative to do.
I'd like him to have the courage to say that, but he doesn't. I mean, he just lacks the courage to say that. Of course, it's just nothing but politics. And if he would just come out and say, this is nothing but politics, sorry, Colorado Springs, we're yanking it down to Huntsville. That's the name of that tune. Maybe if you guys want to, do better in the future, you better, as a state, start seeing things my way. I mean, that would take courage. I don't think anybody's going to actually say that. Do we think Biden would have said that when he pulled it from Huntsville in the first place?
No, and you don't get Polis saying that either. All right, Francis Golden, great call. Sure appreciate it. Francis's line will be open, 303-696-1971. Let's talk advanced hair restoration. Guys, if you're losing your hair and desire to have it back, then Advanced Hair Restoration has the easiest guaranteed solution. Their simple one-day treatment offers life-changing results. I've seen it with my own eyes. Guys, it's not magic, but close to it. They put hair where you need it the most, and bam, it grows. It's actually science, though. Advanced Hair has it all. A top-rated doctor Tanya Paul's modern technology, and best of all, you get your own natural hair that begins regrowing the very next day. Advanced Hair even guarantees it will grow for life. So schedule your free consultation now, 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you'll get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver and has changed the lives of tens of thousands of people. So don't wait. Check out the before and afters online for yourself at 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. Trump going big, battling the narco-terrorists. We'll cover that in the next hour. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is 710 KNU.